We're also bringing up Laura Tatham, our producer and savior.
So, yeah, that was quite an emotional ride, sitting through that or watching it again. But let's go back to, I guess just assembling all this material seems like a massive, what an accomplishment. What was it like?
Fucking nightmare. Yeah, so a chunk of that came from a single archive in Seattle, from the IMC Center. They were collecting footage for many, many years. One of the protesters had been collecting it and finally been digitized. It was roughly 400 hours of footage, all shot by protesters on the street. We supplemented that with network footage, public footage that we got, like the police footage, and it came down to roughly 800 to 1,000 hours in the end. And I don't know if you guys know the Charlie Day meme where he has the conspiracy board behind him. He's like, fucking crazy. That was basically Ian and I editing this for 2 years. It's challenging, man. I've seen many archival docs that are kind of like almost animated Wikipedia articles, and they're often very staccato, and fact, here's the thing. And Ian and I's approach is how do you convey that information but also make it flow, which is incredibly difficult to find the transitional material, but I do have this idea that if it flows well, that you can retain the information more, but also we have this goal of doing something that would educate people about what the WTO protests were, but work on that level, so hopefully you walk away understanding it, how it applies to now, but also we want to create something experiential. So there's the educational layer, but also we want you to just viscerally be in the protest and come away with hopefully an emotional understanding of what that was like.
I was struck by they brought up the concept of I think you kind of manage the public perception of what's going on, like that kind of trumps everything. My sense was like I think that ability has been even greatly refined since that time. And I guess how do you see that, and the ability to actually do things that, like have in-person protests, in modern times, it's like what's the future? You're a filmmaker, it's not your job to know that, but
It's all right.
but I'm sure you've thought about it in the course of making the film.
Yeah, I think that Tom Hayden quote, where he said he saw the intelligence document, and the goal of everything was perception management. Let's make sure that people do not perceive that protest as a viable option for progress or as a way to reach any goal. And I think that's been achieved to a degree. I think many people do see protesters as silly. They see the concept of protest as silly. When I was roughly, I think around 13 when this happened, and I remember it being a news blip. It was, people broke the Starbucks windows, boo-hoo. And my parents were like, the hippies are doing their shit again, because protesters are hippies. And they've been indoctrinated, I guess, to the degree where protest is stupid, it doesn't work, everyone's silly who does it. And I think that's key to the film, and I think it's key to furthering the movement, because we have to, if protest didn't work, the arm of power would not have come down 3 hours into the protest, beating the shit and gassing innocent protesters who were sitting there peacefully. If they didn't think it mattered, that would not occur. And I think we see that consistently now. If protest didn't work, nothing that would be happening on public campuses right now or anywhere in the streets would be happening. There would not be a battle because it wouldn't matter. We'd just be silly idiots in the street with signs. So I don't know. I guess the future of it is we have to not ever let that mentality. We don't have to normalize that mentality. We can't allow that thought process to spoil what we want to say and suppress our ability to fight for what we have to.
I can add to that. I think one thing that's been really heartening, we've had less than 10 public screenings now, and basically like a third of them have fallen on major protest days. So we screened in Milwaukee, Uniontown on May Day. We screened in Durham during the hands-off protests that were nationwide. And next month we're going to be screening in DC on the day of Trump's big 250 anniversary parade, and there are a lot of protests planned for that. So I think that does speak in a way to sort of what's happening right now, the fact that people are seeing what's going on, they are reacting, and that's something that has been sort of a really beautiful synchronicity with our film.
Questions from the audience?
Yeah, so just organizationally, organizing 1,000 hours is very tough and I'm crazy, so it was just, it was by vendor, the network news, the IMC center was all together. But so far as assembling it, so Ian, the director, my co-editor on this, and my filming partner for almost 8 years, we've kind of honed this style. We did a series called Source Material through Vice. It was all short archival found footage documentaries. This is kind of like the monster version of what we were doing with that series. We don't have a paper edit. We don't even really have an outline. We kind of just throw footage on timelines and start messing with it, and watching and rewatching 1,000 hours of footage over and over. And you start finding visual connections and audio that connects to this, and then if you see there's constant continuity editing from multiple angles, we just found that by watching over and over and being like, oh, at that point where the guy's arm is like this, we have the other angle of that, we sync it like that, because we love tedious work. Yeah, it's just, we found the structure of it by playing with footage constantly. Originally we were thinking we'd jump in time, would we expand beyond the 4 days, we had a lot of different ideas, and then we just settled on, we realized we had enough to clearly do a 4-day process and take you through the entire protest in real time, or the equivalent of real time. And we also tried to stay honest in the sense that we wanted this to be a historical artifact first, and then the edit and our choices were to reflect that and be in service of that. So we would never take footage from day 2 and put it on day 1. Basically, if you see something happening, it's when it happened in the protest. Even a couple hours later, we weren't switching the time. We tried to stay starkly accurate to that. And we felt, once we decided on that, realized that we had the ability to do that, we found a structure. Kind of came together from there.
Is there any subversive bad actors that were part of the protest side? Like, were the window breakers just a genuine part of one of the factions extremists, but genuine? Do you think there was some bad actors?
I think in any protest that's this large that brought over 50,000 people to Seattle, there's the potential for that. It's very possible they were part of one of the groups and were like, fuck this, we're gonna break stuff. Also, we should keep in mind they broke Starbucks windows and Levi's, and there actually weren't small businesses in Seattle where that happened. They were generally left alone. There's also this interesting thing where we didn't have enough footage to put in the film, but there was a building that was taken over by what we were told are the anarchists or the Black Bloc. It was very amorphous, but people took over this building and were squatting there for roughly 2 weeks before the protest, and it's right next to the police station. So, and people were aware of this, there were complaints from the public, and the police were aware that people were in this building. And it's curious that nothing was done about that, and they were sitting there training, doing whatever they were doing, and perhaps that's the same group that went out and then broke the windows, and I don't know, I'm getting conspiratorial here, but like maybe that was, someone allowed that to happen, someone knew and let it go, maybe someone was fed some info, I don't know, we're just asking questions here.
It didn't help the police side, right?
Yeah, but then it also became the only story that was really reported, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, that's what I knew growing up, it's like the windows were broken, that was the tragedy of this, like Starbucks, I don't know. But yeah, it just always happens. One little thing becomes the big story, and it's media manipulation. It's purposeful. I mean, we tried very hard to show how media manipulation works in real time, how they would report on certain events, how the language they would use. Even insofar as the one reporter goes, they seem so disorganized and confused. They don't even know why they're protesting. This is what they're not telling you. They're actually not telling you why they're protesting. Here's a whole list of reasons as to why. We just tried to make that very stark. We found that very important, and media manipulation, and the conveyance of this information is part of that the Tom Hayden quote about perception management, just coming down from media companies, which could be, talking points sent down to them from who knows where. So, yeah, try to get into that as much as we can.
Sorry, talking about that made me realize that we have to bring this up because this is certainly a historic screening in that this is the first time we've ever screened next to both a Starbucks and a police station. And there's just something so amazing about it.
We have some ideas for an after party, guys. Or being filmed parodies at times.
I love the film. I have a lot to say about it. I won't say it here, but I had never seen that quote by the former police chief before. I thought it was astounding. What is y'all's take on that?
Oh yeah, it's one of those things that, it was very surprising. I did not know that was his trajectory. I can, up front, philosophy is all cats are beautiful. But finding that out was really heartening and kind of incredible because, so you see in real time the police chief questioning his own actions. On day one, he's militant, going like, I'm not telling you what weapons we're using. How dare you ask? Day 3, he's like, we fucked up their training. We taught them that they weren't going to be attacked no matter what. He's like admitting publicly that they messed up their training. It was a mistake how the police were trained. So we hardened their armor to this idea. And right after that, they did a show and tell all cool weapons that they were using against protesters. But yeah, that final quote where he outright says that I need people to learn from my mistakes. It's incredible because it does give me hope. And we had an interesting screening a month or so ago. There was a big anarchist group that showed up, and they also said the same thing. They're like, that gives us hope because he was so sincere, wasn't flippant, and it's not said in the film that he resigned a couple days later from the protest, and then he spent the rest of his career writing books and discussing police reform and basically apologizing for everything he did. I mean, he did the Jimmy Carter movies. He just spent the rest of his life apologizing for being a police chief or whatever that is. I think that's very noble. I think his writing is very important. I think he's very inspiring. It was a complete discovery. We had no idea going in that we had footage like that, we had access to that, and that we could show someone having a sincere 180 turn from what they were once doing to becoming an activist once against it. So yeah, he's incredible. It's amazing to find really that.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say, just sort of talking about Norm Stamper, I think obviously he has his redemption arc, which is kind of nice to see. But one of the things about this protest in Seattle at the turn of the century, a lot of the things that are now really commonly used in 21st century policing were taken from this. So this is the first time they ever, killed protesters, right, got them together. Some of these weapons were the first time they had tried them out on American citizens. And after these events in '99 is when a lot of folks who were sort of been a part of the police presence in whatever way in Seattle kind of went around to other police stations across the country and were like, hey, here's some great ideas. So I think that probably too had a big part of Norm Stamper looking back and saying, wow, like look what the legacy of this has done.
Also, a fun little fact. Right after this protest, nearly all of those weapons were outlawed by the city council. So no more tear gas, no more rubber bullets, pepper balls. About 2 months ago, the Seattle City Council just voted to re-legalize all those weapons, so we have exciting futures in us.
Over here.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's on the police front again, too, and I'm just curious, in acquiring all of this archival, were there any attempts from anybody in the process to reach out to the Seattle PD or the city of Seattle for any additional maybe footage that they had, or were there any kind of connections there? I'm wondering if there were, what those responses might have been.
So actually, we have a ton of footage from the Seattle Municipal Archive in this. It was free, and that's great. And part of that is also the police footage. So you see like the police doing the training in the football stadium, them kind of talking in football terms at the end, with this great police football theme unintentionally. So, and the helicopter footage as well. So we did have a really amazing archival producer, Devin Clutchy, who had reached out a couple of times and dealt with King County, dealt with Seattle, and got all that stuff for us. So that's a big part of it. And you don't sort of realize actually some of the stuff on the streets as well as from the Seattle Municipal Archive. So it makes up a pretty good chunk of the film.
What do you think in terms of just how media has changed, since then? Like obviously the mainstream media was able to kind of pick and choose what they showed, and today, for better or for worse, we have social media everywhere, so everyone kind of gets their own version of what happens. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Too many for a Q&A. I think that something that's been very heartening, or alluded to it before, but yeah, media's been very stratified, you can kind of form your own bubble if you want. But we've had a lot of people come to this film in previous screenings wanting to know what it's about. Many have come up to us after, like I was 20 days old when this actually happened. I was not aware of it, but I never knew any of this, and they could all apply it to now. We had young activists they said there was protest tactics. They saw the discussion of protest tactics, and the fact there was a film showing that this took organization, and it wasn't just people showing up on a street corner. That was very galvanizing and inspiring to them. So I think I'm hoping that there is this will to break out from the self-imposed media bubbles, at least with a younger generation. And they've been very open to this film, and I think that's something we just have to embrace. And it's heartening, and I hope that's a positive sign. But we could talk about the negatives for like 3 hours.
And what about, if you could maybe expand a little bit, like at the end of the film, we get the sense that the whole power of the WO just got transferred into the U.S. government, and so has that evolved even further since that, or how did that happen more specifically?
Yeah, it's interesting, especially tariffs are in the news. They hit that became the buzzword the moment we premiered, which was very ironic. Yeah, so it was Trump who did that. He did the thing where they weren't going to bring any more judges to the WTO, so they basically couldn't make any decisions anymore. It's interesting that it was done, but in the most selfish way. It's like, no, we have to control everything in the world as the American tradition. And interestingly enough, he also now with the tariffs, tariffs have an actual use in the world. It's a way to bolster home manufacturing, and it's not just meant as punitive punishment all the time. And he kind of achieved, between the judgment of the WTO and the expansion of tariffs, he achieved a goal of the protesters, but in the stupidest way possible that helps absolutely no one, which is kind of a perfect encapsulation of the current administration. But you can't just put tariffs on something and say, cool, manufacturing's back, guys, and I can go down the street in Jersey City and get a $90,000 a year manufacturing job. That's not happening because we're not investing in everything that's needed to be invested into to bring that manufacturing and industry back. So they did the conceptual part of that without any of the actual concrete part. I don't know, DOB's not running into deficit spending for too much investment. But yeah, he can claim that he achieved the goals of the labor class, but it's just it's fashionable, surface level, shallow, non-existent version.
Posturing.
Yeah, it's all posture.
Yes. Yes.
I want to thank you for bringing that. I was just wondering, from your perspective, having sifted through hours of material and nonviolent protests and seeing the results of this, do you believe it has any efficacy at all at this point, even on college campuses and particularly right now? Seeing that there aren't much, there's not much agitation on college campuses to get these values.
I feel like that's something we shouldn't answer publicly.
Yeah, we're talking about
So yeah, our director Ian Bell is a big music person. So he actually found a Third Post Percussion, which is sort of a composing group, and he went out there and he had the film with them. They kind of created street sounds, did things like that in person. So that's kind of the music you hear. We wanted something that would sort of help accent a little bit, keep you going, so you have a little something outside of just like cops tear gassing people all the time. Like, it's nicer if that happens with a little bit of music. And then at the end, honestly, like more was a temp song that we had put in, that Ian had put in for the credits as he was working on, that in between the credit cards, and we really loved it. And we were just like, we don't want this to be anything else. How much could this cost? And we found out, and we bought it. And the same thing with the song before that. Sort of once we realized, okay, we're actually going to keep, a song, we're going to license it for the end credits. Let's see what we can get for the last few minutes of the film as well.
Someone told us, I didn't know I was about to laugh in this movie until I heard Fat Boy Slim over 9/11. I was like, that's what gave you permission.
And actually, you are the last audience to hear Fat Boy Slim or 9/11, so it will be something else forevermore. So you got the last testing of it. So.
Thank you.
We tried.
So what's next for both of you? Are you going to be working together on other projects?
I don't think I can make a movie that way. She's literally a savior on this. Ian and I produced our own stuff for so long, and had the savior producer here. It was incredible. We're working on a few projects, and then what the hell? I never said this one publicly, but finally, I'm making a documentary on a group of men in Poland who are Vietnam War reenactors. So let that process. Very excited about it.
Can't wait. Did you?
I'm just producing a lot of shit. Oh yeah, and also, if any of you are in LA next week, on Thursday, a really beautiful film that I produced, All We Carry, is going to be screening at the TCL Chinese Theater at 8 p.m. on Thursday as part of the lift. So please come out and see that. I'll be there again, and I'll be talking about different stuff. That is not like this at all. Actually, quite heartwarming. So.
Well, thanks for making it through this huge project, and thanks for sharing it with us, and thanks for coming out tonight.
Real quick, I just want to thank you, Paul, because 9 years ago I met Paul at Slamdance for my first movie, and I genuinely would not have a career in filmmaking if it wasn't for Slamdance and Paul. So it's an honor to be here.